Well, with that, Jen, if you want to go ahead and kick us off, I'll let you give us a short introduction and get started. And for everyone here, just remember you have the chat features on the side. Introduce yourselves, say hello, add commentary, ask questions so that we can really make this an engaging, valuable session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. So I'm Jen Forrest, and today I'm going to start off with doing some talking and kind of tell my story. And then for the bulk of it, I want to hear your questions and I want to talk with you. And if you feel comfortable, like Stephanie said, I would love for you to get on video as well. Specifically, we're talking about cultivating your career in tech and questions, real life questions about how to cultivate your exceptional career. So who am I? My name is Jen Forrest. I am an Atlassian nerd and trainer. I've also have a strong business analysis background, Scrum Master, project manager, also avid tweeter. That's my Twitter handle. I also have a slide at the end of this with my contact information. I'd love to have follow-up conversations with you if that's helpful. So when I'm telling my story, I want to talk about 5 career strategies that have worked for me. So 1, make your own opportunities. 2, build authentic relationships. 3, build your brand, which I know we hear that a lot and it's pretty like buzz phrasey, but I think it's important. So we'll go over that. And then feedback is magic and know your why. When I was in the earlier sessions, I think I felt like a lot of things that the panelists were talking about corresponds or like builds on this. So I'm really excited about that as well. So let's talk about my career journey. I just wanted to share with you all how I got to where I am today as a tech leader. So started out with the regular, high school jobs. The big thing was I worked at a restaurant as an expediter and got that customer service experience. I think those type of jobs really build empathy for other people and then also teach a lot of lessons about customer service. So I added this into my career journey because I thought those skill sets were vitally important and that's where I started building them. I did a variety of other things. I was an admin at a semi-truck factory. And then my IT career really started with an internship I had in college with a PMO of a Fortune 500 company, and I got that through my career center at my college. I also started out as an admin for language professors. I was a Russian studies major, and that was my on-campus job. And from then, which wasn't a super glamorous job, but it got me a foot in the door to doing kind of tech support for the professors because that's something I was good at. And that got me a job as a language and technology specialist at their computer lab when computer labs were still a thing. And then from there, I got the PMO internship. And there I graduated college and was a Russian studies major, and my CIA interviews did not work out. And I went into IT at that point. I got an entry-level job. I was doing tier 3 support for Guam. They have interesting time difference from the Eastern Standard Time. And question I see already, what's a PMO? It's a project management office. So that question. Thank you for your questions. Keep on asking them. I appreciate that. So anyway, so I started out my first career, or my first job post-college, full-time, was doing tier 3 support for Guam and doing some other process analysis work. It was not glamorous whatsoever, but I persevered. What Leyland talked about, when you aren't completely content with your job, but you have a time period for it, I did that. I did that in that first job. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this for a year, figure it out, learn from it, give this experience. I'm just fresh out of college. At least I have a job. And so I learned a ton. I found some mentors. And then I went into AmeriCorps. So Jennifer, I saw that you're an AmeriCorps alum as well. So I did I did a year of AmeriCorps while I was also continuing part-time my IT job, but in a slightly different skill set as a quality auditor. And then also part-time, I was a real estate office manager. So a lot of different things going on there. After my year of AmeriCorps, I realized I love the nonprofit world. That was a really good experience for me. I think nonprofits are vitally important as well, but it wasn't the life for me. So I had a crossroads. I had two opportunities: one to go back into tech, and then the other to be a Walmart assistant manager. Yeah, so I went back into tech. And then from there, I have been the queen of pivots. You can already kind of tell there's been some pivoting, like going into AmeriCorps, quality audits, like tier 3 support. Like there's been a variety of pivots, but then next up, the pivots continued. So at first, I was an internal business analyst, and the job was okay. I stayed for, I think, 4 years in that. But what was really cool is I worked for a VP of an organization. So she oversaw over, I think, like 1,000 people, multi-million-dollar projects, and I got to work directly for her. And I had so much mentorship, and I got to see her leadership style. I got to see how she managed things. I got to see how she thought strategically as well. And that was an amazing opportunity. But then I'd been there for 4 years, and I was like, okay, it was a consulting company. I was like, I need to actually do consulting because I've only been internal. I need to learn actually what we do. And the only way for me to learn that is to actually do it. So then I took my first external consulting job as a BA and then a Scrum Master. And then from there, I was like, okay, I've gotten the flavor of internal consulting work, and then I've gotten the flavor of external, like actual client work. I want to work for a company now. So then I did another pivot and I worked for a company, and I found that I solved a bunch of their problems and I learned a ton, and it was awesome. And the company was very small and I outgrew it. So then my next pivot came, and I was like, okay, I think it's time to go back to consulting. And so I went back to consulting, and then went from a BA to a Scrum Master and a PM and a BA. And then also started doing some Jira system administration as well. Meanwhile, I started managing more and more people, more and more work as well, till at some point I was like, I will need to pivot again. And I'm really going to focus on Agile versus more like the project management role. And in our company, the company that I was working for at the time, there wasn't a path to like go from PM to like Agile focus like I did. So I had to create that and do some leveraging to do so as well. And
Jen,
then,
can I interrupt you to clarify for people your acronyms? You have BA, PM, SM,
yes,
what those are.
yes, absolutely. Thank you. So SM is Scrum Master. That is an Agile servant leader type role. Project Manager is our traditional like making sure that the stuff gets done in the project. My favorite kind of project management roles are not like hierarchical top down. It's more, again, in the servant leadership type style, where you're just making sure that everyone has what they need to do to be successful and work their best. And then BA is a business analyst, which can mean a lot of different things. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm getting to my final pivot where I realized, okay, I want to work for a startup. I want to work in the product world. I'm going to do that. So my most recent pivot was in September. That took a lot of soul searching, especially changing jobs during a pandemic is pretty interesting experience. So that's my high level journey for my career so far. As you can see, there's been a lot of pivots. Other things along the way, I picked up a bunch of different certificates. I also learned JavaScript. I've done some testing as well. And yeah, I am the champion of the pivot. And I'm going to talk about next a little bit about these different career strategies that helped me along the way. So one, make your own opportunities. There's been a variety of times where in my career I've had to pivot, or I wanted to pivot, or I wanted to do something that hasn't been happening. So an example of that is I'm now a Jira SME or Atlassian SME. Jira is like an agile project management tool or software development lifecycle tool. And I've become a subject matter expert on it, and I've started doing trainings. And I started doing that by doing like brown bags just internally, like, hey, is anyone interested? And then now it's led to me leading paid trainings as well. Another example of this is I wanted to learn development. So I convinced my company to pay for me to go to a boot camp to learn some development skills. And then also getting into consultancy and then getting out of consultancy as well. I've made those opportunities or figured out that. And a huge way that I've done this also is building authentic relationships. We've touched on that earlier in the other panels, but seeking mentors and people you can learn from, and then also seeking to help others. Some of the folks that I'm thinking of one person in particular. He will try to connect everyone, right? But also because he does that, everyone else is like, oh, I want to give back to him as well. It's a reciprocal type of thing. Networking is not just giving out business cards back in the day when we could exchange things, but it's really building authentic relationships, cultivating meaningful connections, right? Whatever meaningful is to you. And then also it means listening and tending to your boundaries. If you're an introvert, maybe networking means like talking to some folks on Twitter or something like that. It means different things to different people. So make it authentic and make it work for you as well. And I want to give a story about Stephanie. Stephanie and I used to work together, and she actually got me into conference speaking. She had a session on for women in our company. I think it was for women in our company, right? And she was like, let me tell you about how to speak at conferences. And I was like, oh, interesting. So she even had a list of topics that she brainstormed and thought up. So I took one of those topics and paired with someone who had spoke at conferences before, and that was accepted to various talks. And then fast forward, I think 4 years later, I've spoken at over 40 events. And I've even started getting paid on the side to do some speaking. So, and that was brought on by Stephanie,
nice.
Right? Building those relationships and seeking out mentors, or in her case, seeking out folks to mentor. So the next is building your brand. So find the avenues that work for you. That might be LinkedIn, that might be conferences, that might be just generally at work, that might be building your expertise and then being like, okay, this is the person that I need to go for, that kind of thing. Or could be other social media, could be Stack Overflow, could be like a variety of communities, like Atlassian has a community where you can answer questions and such as well. Build your brand in whatever avenue works for you, and again, is authentic to you as well. And then another big thing is feedback is magic. When I've done these different pivots, I've often been in a situation where I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to ask for feedback to make sure that this makes sense and I am not just blundering my way through things. So feedback is magic. And it's good to practice giving feedback. And then both practice giving and receiving feedback. So ask for feedback. Don't just ask for general feedback though. Ask for specific feedback like, hey, you and I just worked on a project together. I'd really like to know for future projects what you thought I can do better in terms of my deliverables or something like that. Ask for specific feedback because people are more likely to give it. A book that has been helpful for that for me is Radical Candor by Ken Scott. And then finally, knowing your why. This came up in one of the earlier sessions as well. I think Glennon said this. So know your why. Why are you in this position that you're in, right? And some of my answers were, I couldn't find another job. So I was in the job because it was giving me time to job search. And part-time, I became a court-appointed special advocate and joined a traveling darts league. So your why can really vary. And for my first job, it was also, I want to be in IT and I need to learn and grow my experience. I need to stay in this job. And then later on, it was, I love seeing this VP in action. And I love being able to watch and learn from her, even if I'm just doing like spreadsheets or something like that, or like not the most interesting work, I'm still learning so much. Or it could be I'm gaining tactical experience from consulting or something like that. Also, I've had times where I have a lot going on in my outside life, and I really just want something where I can provide a ton of value and have flexibility. So knowing your reasons for being in your current role and then knowing your reasons for getting to your next role, I think is pivotal. So again, these are the 5 career strategies that have worked for me. And now, and this is my contact as well. So I would love to hear folks' questions about your careers.
While people are thinking of those, I'm going to start with a question for you, Jen. So in the earlier sessions, we were talking a lot about hiring and resumes. You've had a lot of pivots. How have you made sure to articulate that in a way that was valuable and meaningful when you're applying for a job?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I've been pretty intentional about my story, practiced telling my story, and practiced tailoring my story for the specific job. My past several jobs, I've done a passive approach. So passive is when recruiters seek you versus you seek out, or also it could be referrals as well. So I've had a lot better luck with like the referrals or the passive job searching, especially for those pivot stories.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
See, has anyone else? I know we had at least one person say they also have a multitude of interests and pivots. That has anyone applied these strategies that really have worked? Let's see, Rebecca's going to join us.
Hello. Hi, I'm Rebecca Steele. I love seeing all of your pivots. I am actually a nurse who has been had the fortunate capability to pivot in a little bit into the tech space, where I was previously at a local startup doing remote patient monitoring and developing software around that. I've since gone on to step into doing digital health consulting, and I really want to pave the way for nurses to see themselves as subject matter experts, and also like see themselves in the space of tech, because I think more and more we're seeing these digital tools being built, and I think that they could be even stronger tools with nurses as a part of that process. But I am also currently looking for jobs too. I'm doing this consulting, and I've built some relationships and I've got work right now, but I think I'm really missing that team aspect and really learning from others across different, parts of the business. And so I know in my nursing degree, I don't have a ton of education around or training around like the project management, other than just what I've naturally kind of picked up. So I'm curious, because I really miss that startup space where you get to kind of work collaboratively and kind of bring up ideas. And I'm looking kind of into that space again. I'm curious what your thoughts are around like different things to do to up my skill set, so that I can be taken more seriously and when I go to find these roles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Your story. That's so great because you understand what the users of the software need. So like joining something healthcare related startup, I am sure that they would love to have you. And then two, in terms of like project management skills, if you qualify for the PMP, that might be something to look into. I know getting the PMP for my career, while it didn't add too much, honestly, it didn't add too much from a knowledge perspective. It gave me that credibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like what I've seen and kind of just my experience having watching some other nurses in the spaces that people just, we don't have that project management background. So trying to build those skills so that we can be taken more seriously for other roles and to prove the value add beyond just like that nursing aspect for these companies will be important.
Yeah, there's also, I think the PMP requires a certain number of hours of experience, but there's interim certificates to get to the PMP. So you could look into one of those as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I would add to Rebecca is just the idea of practicing your story with someone else. Mm-hmm. So one of the things to think about is like the words you use, and somebody who's in the industry might be able to help you translate the things you've done to something that might match the terminology in the industry. And that can be another way to articulate your skills in project management.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Jen, what are your thoughts on building your brand in today's world when we're all virtual? You said you were a Twitter aficionado. Is that a good way to build brand? Do you look at LinkedIn? Do you look at other ways to really build your brand and promote that?
Yeah, for me, how I build my brand, which I think is different for everyone, but I have done it by tweeting at conferences. For example, this conference, if you tweet at it, you get a prize, or you are interviewed to win a prize. So that's a nice way to jump into tweeting. Also, LinkedIn has been an important tool for me. Just whatever feels authentic. So, because the last thing you want to do is doing something that doesn't feel good to you, that you don't want to do, etc. Because people can see that. And then the other thing is, I don't just put out content. I make sure that I am mostly interacting with other people's content, and then also put out content and make sure I source it appropriately as much as I can from other people.
So going back to your building relationships, it's more about that than being on a soapbox.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
And people will remember if you interact with their content that they're building. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you get to learn at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. What else? Do we have anyone else with questions, or you want to share your own story? Let's see, we have a question from Lisa.
Yeah. So Lisa's experience is that building tech skills has produced surprisingly few interviews. She's taken courses, added lines to her resume, but each job has a different set of desired qualities. Gotcha. Yeah, that's a tricky one. It might be that you're looking at jobs that aren't quite hitting there. It might be that you need to focus on applying to fewer jobs and change your LinkedIn to match the jobs that you're looking for. I know when I've done job search in the past, I have redone my LinkedIn for a specific job. I'm not recommending that route, but if it's like, if there's a job that you have in mind or a role you have in mind, tailoring your online presence, especially like specifically your resume. Your resume, I've heard people say your resume should be tailored for every single job that you apply for. But
that's what we heard from our panelist before this as well.
Yeah. So that means that you can't put out like the 100 applications a day that some folks are putting out. So it's really quality versus quantity. But you might get different perspectives then as well. And for me, for my last couple jobs, I've really reached out to my network. And it's been some surprising folks that have come up. It's not the folks that I've thought of that helped me the most. It was like kind of like the second connections, or like the person that I always enjoyed grabbing coffee with in the hallway but never actually worked with. Those type of connections as well. So for career switching, I should ignore my work history on my LinkedIn. Your work history on your LinkedIn, if you can tailor it to the position that you're applying for, or the role that you're applying for. So for example, with Rebecca's situation, she could tailor each of her work history segments to pull out the project management skills, or project management tasks, or project management areas or responsibilities that she had in each role. So it's tailored for project management. Okay, Cameron, advice on decision making. Career pivots and growing your career can involve some big decisions, and it can be nerve-wracking to wonder whether you're making the right decisions. Yeah, Cameron, I experienced that in my last career switch when I got out of consulting with a company I loved. I really enjoyed working there. I enjoyed my colleagues a lot as well, but I wanted to get out of consulting. I had that urge. So that was a really tough decision to make, especially during a pandemic. So what I did was I made a pros and cons list of leaving, and I made a pros and cons list of staying. And then I ranked each thing. So like some of them could be like as small as, I really like being able to sleep in until 9:30 and not start at 8 a.m. or something like that. That could be really small. The bigger ones for me were like my last position. I loved my manager. They were so supportive, gave me so much feedback, and were just amazing. So like that was a 10 for me, right? Versus like, I really want to go into consulting. So I did the pros and cons for leaving, pros and cons for staying, and then ranked them, and then added them up and looked at the numbers. And more so than the actual numbers mattered, I looked at how I felt about those numbers. You know, because maybe staying would have been larger, but it's my reaction to those numbers that really helped me understand my decision. I hope that's helpful, Cameron. Okay, Eileen, I'm curious about the pros and cons of different work environments you've experienced, consulting versus small company versus startup. I've also worked in huge companies too. So I think my large consulting firm that I started with, that was a great way to start, because they have very structured career paths. They also have very structured entryways into the company. And then they have like pretty structured, like, okay, this is what you do. This is what you do. This is training that you can have. They also have funding often available for a variety of things to upskill or to do boot camps or things like that. And then small companies though, like Rebecca was saying, it's like a very collaborative environment where you swarm. There's no silos. So like if you wanted to go and do something, if I wanted to go and do some developing, that would probably be encouraged or smiled upon right now. So that's what you get in like a startup environment. It's also super quick, right? It's super quick. Small company, it's a little faster. There's a little bit more silos, but not too many silos. Sometimes they have more structure. It's a little harder to get in. And then consulting versus internal work. Consulting, you go to a place and you help them with whatever solution they need, right? And there's some power dynamics that come with that that you need to be cognizant of. There's also not really a feeling, like you feel like a team with your own consulting buddies, but you don't feel like a team with whatever you're working on, even if you're working there for a couple of years. It's still, you feel like that separation between you and the solution. And sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of space from the problem and space from the solution. You can get a little bit more creative. But I think there's, right now where I'm at, is I want to be part of the team, right? I want to be, we're all in this together. We got it. We're all part of the problem. We're all part of the solution. Let's work it out. I don't know, Stephanie, I know you've done a pivot from consulting to small company. I think you're with a small company.
Small company, yeah. Well, you know what I was thinking about with this question is I've been pretty much in tech, but I've been in different fields, and where I've noticed the difference is predominantly women environments versus predominantly male environments. So I've been in education and marketing fields, which is predominantly women, and I've also been, tech consulting is predominantly male. And those, going back to that first session of talking about authenticity, it's a lot, as a woman, it's a lot easier to feel like I can be more authentic in a mostly female environment. And so I think, I wonder, Jennifer, if you've experienced anything similar in that way?
I think so as well. There's a difference. I've worked in mostly male environments for most of my career. And I do notice the few teams that I have been on that have been like 50-50, because there have been a couple. It just feels there's a deeper level of connection, or there's a deeper level of authenticity and collaboration as well. Yeah. And recently a senior dev came to me who's male, came to me and was like, we need more women on the team because we need more collaboration.
Yeah, this is my stereotype. Mostly women environments are a little bit more chatty, and mostly male environments tell a lot more jokes.
Interesting.
That is my arbitrary observation.
Interesting.
Anyone else had this experience, noticed the difference between like either a 50-50 or a predominantly one gender or another, or, you know, consulting versus small company, big company?
I definitely think large consulting firms can be great entryways into IT, because they do have that structure of like, this is how you get in, this is how you build skills. So that might be an interesting avenue for folks wanting to break into tech to check into. So we have someone saying, consulting gave me a foot in the door to eventually be hired full-time at the company and be an official part of the team. Awesome.
Yeah, that's a great experience.
I've been hearing a lot in the hiring I've been doing recently. I've been hearing a lot of folks who are doing contract to hire. So they're in a contract position for like on average 3 months, and then they make the hiring decision after that point. Has anyone else been seeing that trend lately about contract to hire positions? And or has anyone been in a contract to hire position besides Kaylee, like who has a different thought about it?
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of the trends of companies, you know, being more risk averse right now in terms of hiring people, if that gives them an easier avenue to recruit folks without the commitment, though it puts the person at a bit more risky situation.
It does. And I think Christina was talking about kind of comparing hiring to dating, that you wouldn't just go on 2 dates and then marry someone type of situation. And I thought that was an interesting kind of analogy, because some jobs do last longer than some marriages as well. So and people are not their best on interviews, or often people are not their best at interviews. It's really nervous. People can be really nervous, and it's hard, especially for women, to talk about your skills and sell yourself, and sell your brand, and you're combating imposter syndrome. Again, this is a generalized stereotype. This may not be every woman's experience, but I think that's true for a lot of us. So I liked her approach of like multiple contacts, like multiple touch points in the interview process. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Okay, Jesse and Lisa have talked about contract to hire, and Jesse's currently in the middle of an interview process for a 1099 role. Yeah, I think you're cautious of the 1099 status is a good caution to make or to state. I do, though, I see a lot of jobs where recruiters are reaching out to me that are 1099, and they say, okay, this is a 3-month position on 1099 and the rate is blah, blah, blah. And there seems to be enough coming in that if you're at kind of a mid-level, or if you have some experience and some certs, especially for, I see this the most for like testing roles and BA roles and some project management roles as well. But those seem to be the ones, and maybe that's just the ones I'm seeing because that's my background and that's what they're going for. But I see a lot of 1099 roles for that. And I've known a fair amount of people who have done the 1099 route successfully and happily. It is tricky though in terms of stability and health insurance.
Two very real, going back to Cameron's pros and cons, those may have a higher rating for you depending on where you are in life.
Yep. So Amanda, I've only worked for 2 smaller software companies over my almost 30-year career. And her first company was mostly men in product development. Current one, mostly men coders, but more women in product management, QA, and UX roles. That's what I've been seeing as well. It's especially for mid-level or senior developers, it's the women in those roles can have a lot of negotiating power. And that's something to think about too. Going into different fields, we heard from the hiring experts, diversity is really paramount in most companies' minds right now. So, and one diversity measure is women, or one diversity target is women. So that could be a negotiation factor as well.
Well, Jen, I will let people continue asking any questions or comments, but I think I'll go ahead and let folks know about what comes next. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Jen, for your time. This was really great hearing your story. So I enjoyed it. I hope the other folks who were able to join us did as well. So with that,
thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah, take care. And feel free to connect with me if you want to continue the conversation.